Hi, this is I'll explain. This time I'm going to explain the Gouf. Gouf, model number MS-07B, is a ground battle type mobile suit for the Principality of Xiong. Gouf is developed as the successor to the MS-06 Zaku II, which was mainly designed to fight in space against Federation battleships and space jets. Gouf, on the other hand, is designed to fight on Earth against tanks, aircrafts, and eventually Federation mobile suits. While the Federation did not deploy any mobile suits during the Battle of Loon, there were signs that the Federation was developing them, just not as dedicated as Xiong's did. Xiong intended to keep the advantage in the use of mobile suits, so they required the Zaku II successor to be highly capable in anti-mobile suit combat. Xiong had plans for the invasion of Earth, but after their landslide victory in the Battle of Loon, they decided to expand on the scale of the invasion and possibly took permanent territories. With the Federation Space Force decimated at the Battle of Loon, Xiong had no pressure to replace the Zaku II in space. They decided to make the successor mobile suit a ground Type 1 to optimize its performance. Much like the adaptation of the Zaku, Xiong had different mobile suit development companies submit different designs, and Gouf was submitted by Xiongnik, the state-funded arsenal who developed the Zaku. Gouf won the contract, but did incorporate a few features from Siemens YMS-08 for formal adaptation. Let's take a closer look and see what Xiong formally adopted, starting from the head. Gouf's head is based on the Zaku II, as you would expect for being developed by the same arsenal. A blade antenna is included as standard configuration, instead of being team leader issued only. This is done to combat the complex terrain on Earth, as opposed to the void of space. The snout is also enlarged with longer section of the pulse transmission conduit exposed to increase the cooling surface area, further optimizing Gouf's operational endurance. The mono-eye slit is also redesigned, so no support post is needed, reducing the blind spots on Gouf without sacrificing structural strength of the helm. Gouf's torso looks rather different from Zaku II, but it is based on the same architecture. You can see the two smaller sections on either side, much like Zaku II. Gouf's cockpit is still located right at the belly, much like Zaku II, but the hatch has a significant redesign, which is twice as thick as the Zaku's and supported on a single frame. These yellow triangles are sometimes depicted as transparent parts, but they are only mounted on the outer layer of the hatch and do not function as direct view windows. While there are no concrete records as of what materials they are made of, it seems like they are the same ceramic used on the heat weapons, using their high heat capacity to protect the pilots from beam weapons, although that did not seem to work out too well. Alternatively, given how they are pointing downward to the ground, and Gouf is designed to fight Federation ground forces, they could be auxiliary optics for extra ground observation, much like its own mono-eye optic, which have signal-like function. Gouf can probably use these auxiliary optics to communicate with Xiong troops and vehicles on the ground. Xiong and Xiongnik had gained a new level of insight after deploying Zaku 1 and 2 in full-scale open war. With this newfound knowledge, Xiongnik revised the layout of the Zaku architecture for Gouf in order to improve its manufacturing and maintenance process. For the torso, this in turn improved the efficiency of the cooling and transmission system, while freeing up more internal volume allows Xiongnik to fit a larger reactor and heat pump inside. While they were at it, they also improved the redundancy of Gouf's transmission and cooling system to combat the complex adverse weather conditions on Earth. The pulse transmission conduit that runs around Zaku 2's belly for cooling is moved down to the waist for Gouf. This arrangement not only frees up space in the torso, but also allows a longer length of conduit to be exposed, increasing the cooling surface area. Otherwise, the skirts are fairly similar to that of Zaku 2. Gouf's legs look very different from Zaku 2's like the torso, but once again, they still have the same architecture, revised to be optimized for operations on Earth. First, you will note the absence of the pulse transmission conduits. While they are still there, but being tucked under the armor plate much like Zaku 1, to avoid being slapped on various objects on the ground, as well as protecting them from being targeted. Unlike space, where mobile suits can still move around with their various thrusters, mobile suits are practically immobilized with a damaged leg on Earth. So in addition to the protection of the transmission conduits, Xiong also up-armored the thigh and the knee of Gouf, with pronounced ridges as reinforcements. The extra heat retained from the tucked transmission conduits, however, is not wasted like Zaku 1. Instead, they are now used to power these thrusters on the side of the Gouf's calves. These thrusters are features of Siemens MS-08, and they are added to improve the mobile suit's ability to jump over vertical obstacles or use as counterthrust for airdrop operations. Skilled pilots can even use them to increase the mobile suit's running speed, now incorporated into the Gouf, making Gouf more mobile than Zaku 2 on Earth. Internally, the Gouf's legs benefit from Xiongnik's experience with the Zaku 2J, providing it even better physicality and endurance as Xiongnik revised the overall design. Most Gouf have no thrusters under their feet like Zaku 2J, instead having shock absorbers and actuators for enhanced ground movement. Gouf's arms, like the legs, have more radical development. Gouf has spike shoulder pauldrons on both shoulders instead of just one on Zaku 2, for their use in melee combat. In addition, the main spikes are enlarged like horns, allowing Gouf to use them in forward tackle or other more complex techniques to trap its opponent's limb and weapons. Gouf's forearms have some resemblance of Zaku 2, but with armor segments being reduced and in much more simpler shapes. These changes are done to improve the durability and toughness of Gouf's forearms and simplify the manufacturing and maintenance process. Internally, Xiongnik revised the skeletal structure of Gouf's arms, further developed from Zaku 2J, so they are better suited to be used and worked on Earth. This led to an interesting turn in Gouf's development. Its forearms now have internal space to fit weapons, and we will save the details of these weapons to the weapons section. While Gouf isn't the first Xiong mobile suit to have weapons fixed on its forearms, it is the first to have full functional hands and anti-mobile suit weapons on a mass production mobile suit. Gouf's backpack. Gouf's backpack is similar to that of Zaku 2's, but with larger thrusters. This is another feature from the Mat-Y MS-08, again for improved mobility. Do note on this G-frame the pulse transmission conduits around the waist are not directly connected to the backpack, which is a G-frame original interpretation. Overall, by revising the Zaku's design from head to toe with no legacy space hardware, Gouf came out slightly lighter than the Zaku 2 despite having thicker armor, larger reactor, and thrusters. Gouf sports a rather unique set of standard weapons. Heat rods in the right forearm, 75mm machine guns in the left hand and forearm, a heat sword, and a shield. The heat rod is a very innovative weapon. It is deflated and holstered inside Gouf's forearm normally, and can be shot out and expanded like a rubber hose at supersonic or even hypersonic speed at moment's notice. The heat rod is a whip constructed with similar materials to the pulse transmission conduit. Wrapped with superconductive materials, it is pressurized and powered by the pulse transmission system, so it has some rigidity and can deliver blunt trauma. However, that is only the heat rod's secondary effect. Like its name suggests, the heat rod's main form of damage delivery is with heat produced by the superconductive wrapping. Usually the heat would be delivered after the heat rod already wrapped around its target, but skilled pilots can make accurate whipping attacks, effectively cutting its target with a combination of supersonic strike and heat. The heat rod has a more famous alternative mode, however. By delivering pulse of alternating currents, the heat rod can be used to deliver electric shock to its target. Its effects range from overloading its target's controls temporarily, damaging more delicate electronics, to even shocking the pilots inside. However, the more permanent damage requires fairly long exposure to the heat rod, and Gouf would also be tethered to the target during this time. So this alternate mode is usually used to overload part of the intended target for Gouf to take advantage of. These 75mm machine guns integrated into Gouf's left hand and forearm is designed to free up its hand for melee combat. You can see the inner diameter of the fingertips looks a lot larger than 75mm, despite G-frame isn't exactly scale accurate. The proportions are mostly correct. That is because the 75mm machine guns are in Vulcan style, so the inner diameter of the fingertips are that of multiple 75mm barrels. While the left hand is supposed to be fully articulated like a proper hand, this is a G-frame, so it is fixed in firing mode, where the segment barrels are locked in straight with the fingers. With 5 75mm Vulcans firing simultaneously, this setup has more firepower than the Zaku machine gun at close range for mobile suit combat. It is also more effective against aircraft with sheer volume of fire, and just as if not more effective against ground vehicles and foot soldiers. All 5 75mm machine guns are fed from a single internal magazine inside the forearm. While that is a lot larger than most Federation head-mount Vulcans, it is not feasible to be reloaded in the midst of battle. Gouf's shield is an entirely new design, although its construction is not too different from Zaku's shield. Like Gouf's leg armor, the shield has ridges along its length and width as reinforcement. It also has a witness port on the top side. Although this design was made a couple of months before the Federation's coffin shield, the decision to move Gouf's shield back to the forearm like Zaku 1 is again to improve Gouf's melee capabilities, since most pilots find Zaku 2's shoulder-mounted shield less desirable in melee. Gouf's shield also hosted the hit sword. Unlike the fixed-size blade we have seen with Ifrit, Gouf's hit sword uses a shape memory blade, which would contract into the inside of the hilt. When activated and heated up, the blade would return to its full size. The decision to use this type of blade is for its ease to carry, for Gouf and logistics. However, this shape memory blade is much harder to make compared to the fixed-size blade, so it slowly fell out of fashion before the end of the 1-year war. Gouf's right hand is compatible with Zaku's, so Gouf can wield any weapons available to Zaku 1 and 2. In fact, the MS-07A model of Gouf has no integrated weapons, and are often seen armed with Zaku machine guns and bazookas. The A model often got ignored simply because the B model is a lot more memorable. After going over Gouf's design and weapons, you should get a picture that Zeong had determined melee combat would dominate combat among mobile suits. This assessment came from Zeong's own Mobile Suit Academy and brief encounters with pre-Project V Federation mobile suits. This is not to say Zeong is wrong about this assessment, but they certainly miss quite a few parameters. Zeong's Mobile Suit Academy was involved in the conception and development of Zeong mobile suits very early on. Their deep understanding of mobile suit operation cannot be easily transferred to students, let alone wartime recruits. All the finer points of using Gouf's horn pauldrons, sword fighting instead of simple axe chopping, and the hit rod, which requires a completely separate set of skills, making Gouf rather difficult to be piloted to its fullest potential. Zeong did have a new set of preset moves for the Gouf to make all its new features easier to use, but that also alienated pilots who were used to the Zaku 2. In addition, after all have been said and done, Gouf ended up being less than 50% compatible with Zaku 2 in parts, which was exactly what Zeong did not want. They had enough trouble with the Zaku 2 not being fully compatible with Zaku 1. Adopting a new model that is even less compatible would put even more strain in their strengthening logistics. The final nail in the coffin, however, was that a Gouf, piloted by the blue giant Rumble Ra himself, was defeated by the White Devil. Rumble Ra was an instructor in the academy and was one of the most decorated pilots of Zeong at that point. If he could not overcome Gundam with the Gouf, there are very slim chances that anyone else can, and that is before Federation unleashed multiple RX-78. Zeong had not figured out that there were in fact many RX-78 running around. So the plan to adopt Gouf as the standard ground battle mobile suit, as well as successor of the Zaku 2, was held indefinitely. However, most Gouf would be painted in blue in honor of Rumble Ra afterward, and Zeong would issue the Gouf to team leaders for special operation units, usually airdrop brigades and ace pilots skilled enough to unleash the Gouf's full potential. Most Goufs were left on Earth during Zeon's withdrawal, and many of them fought until the end of the 1-year war. After the war, Gouf was not too popular with Zeon remnants, since it is harder to use and maintain in comparison with Zaku's, nor possessing the speed of Dome and raw power of Geogok. Federation did not adopt Gouf like Zaku and Geogok either, but they did take note of Gouf's unique role within the Zeon mobile suit lineup, and developed a new class of mobile suits known as assault mobile suits. That is not to say Gouf had no legacy outside of being a branch of Zaku development. Gouf was being used as a testbed for flying mobile suits. While those also fell short, they did prove the practicality of long-distance hovering for mobile suits. This boosted Zeon's confidence in MS-09 Dome. Speaking of Dome, we had talked about how Gouf was used as a testbed to improve Dome's compatibility with existing Zeon parts as the Gouf C5. We also talk about how that became a threat, and that in turn helps Zeon to start standardizing their mobile suit parts. There is a lot more to Gouf's legacy, but this is a good point to wrap up the story of MS-07B, the base model of Gouf, and I shall continue on Gouf's legacy with its variants. Thanks for watching.